Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, DevOps for the Mainframe. My name is Chris Riley. I'm a DevOps industry analyst, and I'm here just to moderate the webinar. This webinar was brought to you by DevOps.com and content brought to you by Broadcom. And it's a topic that I'm super fascinated about, so I'm excited to see what George talks about. Always interesting to find out the intersection between old and new. Before we kick it off, just a few housekeeping items. If you have a question, you will see a questions dialog in the GoToWebinar panel there. Type your question there and we will try to get to that during the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your question, then we will follow up with you after the fact and respond then. This webinar is recorded, so make sure in a few days you'll get an email with a link to download the recorded webinar. Make sure you share that with your peers because a lot of interesting content. If they weren't able to join, you can able to share that as well. And then finally, on this webinar, we have a giveaway of 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. So we will announce the winners of those gift cards at the end. And so make sure you stick around for that to see if you are a winner. If you are a winner, you'll get an email with information on how to claim it. So with that, I want to introduce you to George from Broadcom, and he's going to teach us about DevOps for the mainframe. George, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Chris. So good morning, everyone. Just to introduce myself a little further, my name is George DeCandio. I recently joined the Broadcom team as the CTO of the mainframe division. I lead a team of very experienced mainframe and systems developers and architects that are that have literally decades of experience in the industry. So it's a real dream job for me. Before joining Broadcom, I worked quite a while, over 27 years at IBM. I was involved in the Eclipse IDE project. If any of you know about that, I was involved in some of IBM's initial contributions there and worked with IBM in helping us develop our open source strategy around Eclipse and how we built our products on top of that Eclipse platform. In more recent years, I was working on the Rational Jazz platform suite of applications. And if any of you are familiar with these applications, they're application lifecycle development tools, which actually aid customers to some degree with developing a DevOps process and delivering more frequently. And in that capacity, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of customers who were trying to accelerate their software delivery or get some other outcomes that are the promise of DevOps. So I have some experience here in the topic that I'm speaking in. And now that I've joined Broadcom and am very focused on mainframe, particularly interesting to me is how to integrate mainframe into DevOps. So I've been working with our team on the strategy that I'd like to share with you this morning. Okay, so let's look at the agenda for this call. So first I'm going to introduce you a little bit to Broadcom. As many of you know, Broadcom recently acquired CA, and I just wanted to try to explain a little bit why that is, what was Broadcom's interest, and what does that mean for you if you're a customer of CA mainframe products or any CA product. And then we're going to jump into DevOps. So first we're going to start out with some of the motivations. Why might you want to go through a DevOps transformation? Why should you start looking at integrating your mainframe into your DevOps processes? And then talk to you a little bit about what we feel is the right approach for integrating mainframe into DevOps, and that's an open source driven approach. We'll look at some of the use cases, and I'll share a case study with you. It's an internal case study, but one that that's actually quite interesting. So we'll go through that, and then at the end we'll wrap up with talking about techniques, maybe some quick wins, things you can look at as you start to navigate your DevOps journey, particularly your DevOps journey on the mainframe. So I hope this agenda is interesting to everyone, and if so, we'll get going. Okay, so Broadcom, as I mentioned, back in November of last year, Broadcom acquired CA, and this was actually quite a shock through a lot of the industry. There wasn't a lot of understanding as to why Broadcom who's largely been a semiconductor company, would want to acquire a software company. But when you look a little bit deeper, you can understand why that is. So first off, if you don't know about Broadcom, you're probably using a cell phone that has a Broadcom chip or modem in it. And most certainly Broadcom is in your data center. So our networking and storage products are very prevalent in data centers. And so it's not really that big of a stretch here. What Broadcom saw with CA is that they realized through the growth of their own data center business, this has been an area of significant growth for them over the past years, and they realized that this was only growing as the on-prem capacity was required, as well as all the service providers that are using Broadcom hardware. They realized the data center was going to be a good business for them going forward. And it didn't take long to realize that mainframes were still a major player in data centers, right? So mainframe software is still running in almost 90% of the major Fortune 500 companies. So they started to investigate mainframe software companies, and they saw that CA, of course, is one of the leaders in mainframe software, and that it had some really good attributes. It had a very strong business, and it was a business that in recent years was probably underinvested in. So CA had been stabilizing its investment in mainframe, and with Broadcom, they felt like if they acquired the mainframe business as well as the enterprise software business, and they sort of nurtured this by allowing us to invest in it a bit, that we could stabilize our revenue and grow revenues in future years for many years. So that's what we've been doing. Broadcom has invested significantly in the 8 months that they've acquired, since they've acquired CA. We've been hiring like crazy. There's no other way to say it. We've got over 300 job positions we're trying to fill. We've got over 150 already, in-house working on mainframe projects, and another 50 acceptances, and we're still hiring crazy for another 100 positions. So it's an exciting time here. It's very exciting for me as I came in right as the acquisition was happening, and the teams are really excited about this new investment and bringing additional value to our customers with it. Okay, so that's Broadcom in general. So what about Broadcom and DevOps? So Broadcom has been recognized as a leader in the DevOps field by Gartner in almost every category as a leader or a visionary. And these awards have spanned multiple years. So many of these awards we've gotten consecutively over several years. But probably more important for this audience is that in 2018, we were recognized with the most innovative or the best solution provider around DevOps. And then in 2019, this year, the Brightside product, which is a mainframe-oriented product, it's a product oriented towards integrating mainframe into DevOps, was awarded the most innovative DevOps product. So this is really significant to us, something we're proud of. But there's just awards. What's most important to us is what we can deliver for our customer, providing real value in their shop. And we've been doing this for quite a while within Broadcom CA. So just before we get going, I wanted to make an observation here. So many of you may know CA Endeavor. This is the market-leading SCM product. So it's not just source code management, but it's build and deploy as well. This product was developed in the 80s and became very popular, growing to the market leader in the mid 90s. And you may not know, but Endeavor stands for an environment for development and operations. So this is really one of the original DevOps products, right? Development and operations, DevOps. And it was recognized very early by CA and by our customers that integration of development, changing source code, along with automation of build and deploy was a high value and could help streamline things in the development process. And that's why Endeavor became so popular. On the process side, CA has been sort of a leader in agile and continuous delivery in the mainframe space. So we've transitioned to agile ourselves. We started looking at this in about 10 years ago, and really about 7 years ago, transitioned the whole mainframe development organization to agile. Since then, we've been adopting key aspects of SAFe. We've also been for quite a number of years now, over 5 years, been delivering incrementally to our customers. So instead of large releases, we've been doing quarterly releases with features, across of all of our products. And just recently, we have announced a move to continuous delivery. So continuous delivery means that we'll be rolling out features as they're available to all of our product lines. No or limited huge splash releases with lots of features. Instead, making these features available in a very seamless way, applicable, very similar to a PTF for our customers. So we're really trying to internally, to walk the talk here. So we are a user of Endeavor ourselves. All of the different tools and processes that I'm going to get into in a moment were born out of our labs, and we are using ourselves. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the presentation here. So why DevOps? What are we trying to achieve by going through this DevOps transformation? So one thing for sure is that transformation like this is not easy. So you want to make sure that the outcomes, the payoff is there for actually going through this effort. So for mainframe, there's really 5 key outcomes that you can achieve by starting to adopt key aspects of DevOps. So the first one is accelerating software delivery. So this doesn't necessarily mean your developers coding quicker and checking in code more quickly. It's really about accelerating the time that it takes from when your developers start working on a feature to when that feature gets delivered to a customer, most likely deployed to a customer through a live deployment of your application. So, if you think about your organization now, your mainframe organization, you may have a delivery time of 6 months, some of you even a year, right? Maybe you upgrade your application quarterly or every 6 months. Some may even do annual deploys. Well, with DevOps, we're talking about significantly reducing that, right? We're talking about deploying much more rapidly. The leaders in this space deploy sometimes multiple times a day, but at least with mainframe software, we talking about getting down to deployments on the order of weeks or days rather than months or years. Just as an anecdote here, so Amazon has a lot of presence, a lot of applications out on the internet, and they are one of the pioneers of DevOps process. And I read this statistic, actually. It's quite old now. I think it's over 5 years old. But 5 years ago, they were deploying a new feature to one of their applications on average every 11.6 seconds. And the average number of hosts that they updated with each deployment was greater than 10,000 or around 10,000. So, companies are doing this at scale, and these are tend to be leading companies that are very responsive to their customers. The next aspect of DevOps, that this one's probably more specific to mainframe than it is and anything else in the enterprise. This is around recruiting and onboarding the next generation of developers, right? So if you're like most of our customers, what you've been experiencing is that your workforce has been aging. Maybe some of your experts are retiring, and you need to replace them and be able to onboard new developers, potentially experienced developers, or maybe even developers coming right out of university. And these developers are going to be very experienced with the processes and tools of DevOps. So if you want to recruit these types of developers, you're going to need to speak their language. You're going to need to allow them to use the tools that they're familiar with and follow the processes that they have learned in school. So modernizing your development process is a key way to achieve this. We'll go into that a little bit more and what you can do to achieve this outcome. Aligning with enterprise DevOps. So most of you, I would suspect almost all of you, your mainframe doesn't sit on an island anymore. Your customers aren't using green screen applications. These are fronted with mobile and cloud applications, web applications that customers interact with, and the backends are supported by mainframe applications. Well, these mobile and cloud applications are usually developed these days using some sort of DevOps process. So the enterprise is squeezing down and accelerating their delivery time. But when they require a change in the back end on mainframe, things oftentimes come to a screeching halt, right? Where your feature that was going to take you 2 weeks to develop all of a sudden is going to take you 6 months because making a change to the mainframe back end takes that long. So aligning in with these enterprise DevOps processes, integrating mainframe in so that it can be, as agile and responsive as your enterprise may be, is the key outcome. Driving digital transformation, the need for developing more and more applications that may come to your mainframe backend is just increasing, right? It's when's the last time you physically went into a bank? I don't even know if my bank has a branch in my town any longer, right? But everything's moving on to the web, and every business, no matter how small or large, needs digital presence. So the need for developing applications is increasing, but at the same time, as we almost all know, working in a mainframe business, we need to reduce costs of development, quality assurance, and operations. So there's this increase in the need and this desire to decrease the costs. So DevOps is one way that can help achieve that. So these are the main desired outcomes. So at this point, we're going to do a quick survey of the audience that's on this call. I see there's about 75 of us. So why don't we do a poll to see which one of these outcomes is most desired by the participants here. So, Sophia, are you able to do the poll? Okay, I see. And I'm starting to see the results come in here. So it seems like very interesting. So aligning with enterprise DevOps is the top result at 36%, followed by accelerating software delivery. And the one that's least important to the audience here at 5% is recruiting and onboarding next generation. So I think you guys can probably see those results yourself. But this is not too surprising. I think usually we see certainly the top two the same here as when we talk to customers. Okay, great. All right, so now that we know the outcomes that we're looking to achieve with DevOps and mainframes, let's just quickly go into what DevOps is. So many of you are likely familiar with this. There's lots of ways to represent the DevOps lifecycle. We like to think about it as this sort of endless cycle, right? This cycle of constant improvement of coding, testing, building and testing your code changes, releasing them, deploying them through operations monitoring, and then back into planning and coding to respond to feedback. So the way I like to think about this is we really want to make deploying a change into production a boring event, right? Where many of you may have deployment weekends, right? Where you're getting ready to do a big deployment and people come in off shift on the weekends. They do the upgrade. They test to make sure the upgrade's working right. And if there's any problems, roll back. And then things go live and everyone holds their breath, right? And this may be, a monthly or quarterly occurrence for your organization. DevOps is really about eliminating that and making deployments an everyday occurrence, so something that's sustainable and, frankly, a non-event, right? It just happens and you're confident that you can deploy incrementally, continually. So that's what it's about. How does it work? So it starts off at the planning phase where typically almost everyone following DevOps these days is following some sort of agile process and agile planning process. And they're pulling off stories from their backlogs and developers are implementing them. And they're using developer tools that help them to not only develop the code, but integrate the code. So these are tools like integrated development environments, SCM with merge capabilities. The key here is that as developers are developing these bite-sized stories, they're integrating them together and they're merging the code with the changes that other developers are making. So no longer do you have these long cycles with code branches and big merges at the end. The SCM typically is integrated in with an automated build and test process. So your testing needs to be automated, or at least we need to start doing test automation. This is a real key piece of DevOps, and without test automation, it's very tough to accelerate the delivery to the levels that we've been talking about. But testing is just one piece of it. And there's a number of different types of testing that gets done, from unit testing up to functional and integration tests all the way out to performance and deployment tests, and you may have different pipelines created which test these different types of areas of your code. And as they pass these tests, they get deployed or released into deployment environments and eventually released to the customer. We then move into the operations phase where you're trying to shift left operations. So what this means is your developers have transparency into the application actually operating, and they have a responsibility when something goes wrong with this application. So they actually, you're not throwing over the walls anymore to the ops team. They're part of the ops team. They're helping monitor this, and they understand the impact of their code on operations through monitoring and continuous feedback. And then the loop starts again. So this is DevOps. Our goal from a Broadcom point of view is to leverage the tools that people are already using for DevOps. This is a set of processes and a methodology that has been around for many years now, 5 to 10 years, I would say, depending on who you talk to. A number of open source tools have grown up around this, as well as commercial tools. And many of you, as indicated by the polls, already are starting to adopt these processes and tools on the distributed mobile cloud side. And our goal is to really bring mainframe in here and to be able to integrate mainframe in with the other DevOps processes that you may already be following. So we want to make it as easy as cloud, and we're really focused on making it open source driven. So let's take another look at the cycle, but let's look at it in relation to tools. So as you might expect, with our history of and heritage in DevOps, the CA Broadcom has a number of tools that can help developers, and as well as test engineers and sysops, with the tasks around DevOps. So we start off with tools in the planning cycle like Agile Requirements Designer and Rally. An interesting story about Rally. So I mentioned that we went through this Agile transformation ourselves, 5 to 10 years ago, and we had a number of attempts to use Agile planning tools and didn't have much success with them, actually. And we came across Rally, and not just the tool, but the process that the tool helps you follow around Agile. It's really a tool that's aimed towards Agile, and we had so much success with it, we decided to purchase it and make it available to our customers as well. So it's a acquisition born out of internal success. So that's the planning side. On the code and build side, we have the market leading SCM, which is Endeavor, as well as 4GL tools that are very popular with our mainframe customers, the CA-Gen and Talon and others. On the test side, we have a range of tools to help developers debug and test their application. Things like FileMaster Plus, InterTest, and SimDump. Interestingly enough, you'll see some of our enterprise tools over here, like BlazeMeter, has been enhanced to allow for performance testing of mainframe applications. So in its latest release, it actually has features that can drive mainframe green screens to help automate and measure performance tests. On the release and deploy side, we have the Atomic products, so continuous delivery director and continuous delivery automation. So these, many of your enterprises may be using these tools, and if so, we've worked with these tools to integrate mainframe, which we'll talk about a little bit, a few slides. And then, of course, on the operation and management side, this is where our heritage in mainframe really shows through. We have quite a number of market-leading tools on both the operation sides, tools like Ops NVS, and on the monitor side, like SysView and NetMaster. So you can see we have a rich set of tools that both on the distributed side and the mainframe, our customers can leverage. However, we know for certain, and we know it's not practical to think that any of our customers, to be honest with you, will adopt a full CA tool set, right? We know that our customers will use tools from other vendors. Our customers will also use open source tools. Increasingly, open source is creating some of the leading development tools and DevOps tools. And we recognize that. Developers know how to solve problems for themselves. They like doing that. And that's why there's such a vibrant open source community around development and DevOps tools. So we really want to embrace that. So our strategy has really been one that we're enhancing with two products, one called Zowe and one called Brightside. And what these products do is they open up the mainframe to DevOps tools by providing RESTful APIs and command line interfaces that can be integrated in to almost any tool chain. So what Brightside and Zowe do is they provide sort of a framework for tools to enable a command line interface or enable REST APIs. They also provide a good set of mainframe REST APIs and command line interfaces out of the box, right? So things like accessing data sets on the mainframe, executing jobs, kicks transactions, DB2 and IMS management, all of those things are out of the box with Zowe and Brightside. You can execute those through command line interfaces and integrate those into a lot of the development tools and maybe even your own proprietary scripts, right? So some of our customers have a lot of homegrown scripts that they need to integrate mainframe into in order to make it part of their enterprise DevOps. So Zowe and Brightside are a key piece of our strategy here. In addition, we're enabling our products, our market-leading products, to Zowe and Brightside. So we're providing REST API and CLI for our products. The ones that you see in bold here are already available in either in general availability or one of them here is in beta. And we're going through the conformance process that Zowe publishes for all of these extensions. So all of these except for the one in beta have passed the Zowe conformance program. And what you'll see is over time, we plan on enabling all of these tools to Zowe and Brightside. So this will take a while. It will be incremental over time. And we're really trying to partner with our customers to understand what use cases we can use or we should look at first. So, what are the use cases? What are you trying to automate? And that will drive what APIs we'll provide and the priority that we'll provide them. So we encourage you, and I have some information later on in the presentation and how you can engage with us. And we encourage you to do that so that we can prioritize your needs and make sure that we enable any products that are not yet enabled. So Zowe and Brightside, through its API and CLI enablement, really extend the tools that are available to you to include a vast array of open source tools. So you can see here would try to list some of them. The lists are too extensive to fit everything on a slide, but popular SCMs like Git, task runners like Gulp and Gradle, as well as popular test automation frameworks like Mocha. On the CI/CD side, Jenkins is probably the most prevalent and certainly very easy to integrate in with Jenkins using Zoe and Brightside. So you can see the strategy here is, we're trying to provide market-leading tools to help you and extending those tools to mainframe where appropriate, but also opening up mainframe to existing open source tools is a key piece of our strategy. And this is also a very good way to help reduce costs, right? If you're trying to build out a tool chain around all of DevOps, there's likely a lot of tools that you're going to have to adopt. And one nice attribute of open source tools is that they're free. You don't have to, you don't necessarily have to pay anything to start adopting them, which is a nice attribute, especially if you're trying to reduce cost. Okay, so we've got a few poll questions here around open source. So let's do the first one. So the question is, how integrated is mainframe into your enterprise DevOps? And let's see. Also, not very surprising. So if I add up the limited integration or no integration, we're hitting close to 80%. So let's follow this up with the next question, which is, how important do you think integration is? All right. So you can see the dilemma here, right? So there's existing very little integration, but almost everyone on the call thinks that integration is at least 50% think that it's a major problem, and then another 40% believe that it has at least some limited business impact. So this is a really important area and an area that we feel from Broadcom point of view is important to focus on for our customers. Okay, great. Thanks for participating in this. All right, so when we look at trying to automate the DevOps through tools, there's a couple ways that this gets done. So the way I like to look at it is, the first way is sort of trying to automate the development experience, and these are typically done through interactive workflow. So this is when a developer is learning code, they're trying to actually write code, debug it, merging that with work that other developers have done. So this is typically interactive, and if you want to do automation of these, you're going to have to help automate the developer flows, typically through an IDE. The second automation is done sort of in the background. So these are automating workflows around things like running scanner tools, doing builds, automating tests, automating deployments, and then reporting from operations. So these are things that you want to automate to run, frequently and automatically as part of the process. So we need, what we do is we look at both of these areas and see what we can do to help smooth these friction points out for mainframe developers. So when we look at the developer experience with SCM, there's two approaches that you see by some of our competitors in the market. So the first one is, hey, replace your current SCM and build process and move to Git. because Git is what all these open source tools integrate with. It's what young developers coming out of university are used to seeing. And this is, a high risk and very high cost. So that can be a challenge, and it's not leveraging the investment that you have. The other technique we see is similar: migrate to an SCM that has a really nice IDE associated with it, and make all your developers use this IDE, whether they're using it now or not. So that has all the problems of migrating an SCM that vendor A has, but the additional complexity of having to force your developers into using a particular IDE. The approach that we'd like to sanction is to extend the SCM that you're probably already using and provide a Git front end to this, which would allow you to use your IDE of choice, so that you really are getting the best of both worlds. You can continue using your existing SCM through the IDEs or ISPF screens that your customers or your developers are currently using. And at the same time, you can extend to new developers who are more interested in using more modern IDEs or using Git as their SCM. So let's take a look at the way that this works. So, today, if you're using CA Endeavor, you've got the capability of interfacing directly into Endeavor through either ISPF or a number of Eclipse-based IDEs that have mainframe plugins built for them. And as you interact with this SCM, your sources most likely will build on and deploy through Endeavor build and deploy functions. But if you want to integrate this into automation, we've extended Endeavor now so that it can trigger an automation pipeline, something like Jenkins. So as developers checking code, you can automatically trigger your automation. And Jenkins is just one example. But the other thing that we've done here is we've created an interface between Endeavor and Bitbucket and GitHub, so what we call the CA Endeavor Git Bridge. So this essentially provides a Git interface, a synchronization from Endeavor into Bitbucket and GitHub, where developers can now connect to GitHub or Bitbucket using the IDE of their choice, right? So for many, this is becoming Visual Studio Code rather than Eclipse. They can, if they want to use straight Eclipse, they can hook Eclipse to Git as well as to Endeavor. And then we see another generation of IDEs on the horizon as well, which this integration enables. Using Visual Studio Code for mainframe development, in order to do that, we've needed to extend Visual Studio Code to know more about mainframe development, to know about COBOL code and mainframe data sets. So there's extensions that have been written as part of the Zowe work to enable Visual Studio Code for mainframe development. And then this next generation IDE, we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing around that in the next few slides. So just interesting, giving developers a choice of IDE. So first off, I'm a strong believer that you can't force a developer to use an IDE. Most developers are going to use what's most productive to them, maybe what's most familiar to them. And even if you could, the preferred IDEs are going to change over time. And you can see this when you look at the results of this Stack Overflow survey. So this is a 2018 survey around which IDEs are most popular. And if you had done this survey, 5 to 7 years ago, you would have seen Eclipse out on top, right? But you see that other IDEs have become more popular to Eclipse, and Visual Studio Code is really popular in the industry right now, especially with young developers. And if you look at the same survey in 2019, you could see that Visual Studio Code has grown even larger, and Eclipse is shrinking a bit more. If you look at the year-to-year growth numbers, it's staggering. But this isn't to say, wow, you should all move to Visual Studio Code. The main point here is that the IDE of choice for your developers is going to vary. You can see, even in this survey, there's quite a number of them that have high percentages, and allowing them flexibility in which IDE they use is important. Okay, so again, the ISPF can be used for mainframe development. We're not taking that away. You can use your Eclipse-based IDE, but then we're also looking at some new cloud-based alternative IDEs. One of these is called Eclipse Che, and we believe that over time this will become sort of the next generation of IDE. It has some really nice features. It's compatible with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code plugins work, but it's all cloud-based. So there's workspaces on the cloud. The developers don't have to download anything onto their machines, and there's no maintenance costs of deploying these IDEs onto your developer's machine. So we're very interested in Che, and we'd like to see if we can grow this around mainframe. So we've partnered with the Eclipse Foundation, and we've introduced the Che4z subproject. So this is enabling the Che web-based IDE to mainframe development. So we're starting off with COBOL language server protocol implementation, and that's been donated out there already. And we're going to follow this up with other implementations and really trying to build a community around this and engaging around what we hear from the community to inform our future contributions out to this open source project. Okay, so turning from developer experience into automation, the key to automation here is that we feel is enabling mainframe to open source tools through REST APIs and CLI, and that's what this open source Zowe project is. And you may know Broadcom is a major contributor to the Zowe project in donating the API mediation layer as well as a good amount of the CLI. And you may be wondering, well, what's Brightside? Well, Brightside is a distribution of Zowe is the right way to think about it. As we've started working with our clients, they really like the idea of Zowe and what Zowe can accomplish in their organizations, but they're nervous about using open source, straight open source, without any support. So Brightside is really a supported version of Zowe at its core. It's the entire stack of Zowe will be supported with Brightside 24/7. We've done all the legal scans, we've tested it, and we're adding some value add as well as simplified installation, as well as all those CA extensions for making them easier to install for our products. And over time, you may see some early access to some of the innovations before they've actually been donated out. They may appear in Brightside, and we've got a few of those there now. So the idea here is really listening to the customers, hearing they want to use this, but they need it in a supported way. Brightside delivers that, and it's available now, and it supports the entire stack of Zowe. Okay, so if we look at the use cases that are enabled by Zowe, so there's literally an infinite number of use cases that you can do with this CLI and REST APIs, both on the DevOps integration into development environments or on the ops side as well. And we've got a number of places you can look to start thinking about what use cases you might want to automate. So one place I recommend looking is this article by Rose, who's one of the product managers for the Brightside product within Broadcom. She's talks about the 5 top use cases that we've seen most customers wanting, including, being able to integrate their IDE and integrate task runners in with mainframe tasks, automating tests all the way down to automating your pipeline and automating automation. We also have a white paper out there which helps with getting into more details around these use cases. So there's over 25 use cases outlined in this white paper. So I encourage you to take a look at that. So quickly, I wanted to talk about an internal use case. So we've taken Brightside and deployed it out internally to our teams, and our teams are having a lot of fun automating their processes, and we're starting to see some results. So this case study is around a team that actually already had a lot of automation. They had some automated tests. They had an automated build process. But what they didn't have is a good way to automatically provision and deploy these builds into test environments. And they had a lot of automation, but it wasn't all orchestrated together. So we had a team of 4 engineers who were really motivated. They took Brightside, and in about 60 to 80 hours, they used this to automate the deployment and provision of their app into test environments. And then they created a automation where before, when their code was checked in, they'd have to automatically run, they'd have to manually do provision and then manually run the automated test. They orchestrated that all into a pipeline. And what they saw was, what you would expect, a gain where the provisioning moves to almost nothing because they've automated that. But they've also seen some gains in testing because the users didn't have to manually run the tests. They were always running as whenever code was checked in. And almost unexpectedly, they also saw a huge reduction in the amount of time that it took for them to onboard new people, because people didn't have to know how to set up the environments or run the tests. They were just automatically happening as they develop code. So you could see that just with a small investment here in some areas, they were able to realize almost a 25% increase. Okay, so I'm running a little bit short on time here. I wanted to talk about how you can get going. So the first thing is understand what you want to achieve before you start in, and prioritize your actions based on the outcomes that you want to achieve. So think about which of these outcomes are most important to you, and start thinking about the actions you can implement to make some progress. Alignment with enterprise DevOps is critical. Don't start on your own. Understand what your enterprise has done, and start understanding how you can use Brightside and Zowe to align with your enterprise process and integrate into that process, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Automated testing is key. You're not going to get very far unless you start thinking about automated tests. And this can be pretty daunting. What I encourage you to do is start somewhere. You don't have to do it all at once, but start with a smoke test. stand up a unit test framework so that your Z developers can have a way of capturing and starting to write unit tests as they make code changes. Start somewhere and build from there. And then, of course, modernizing with the GitHub or some of these newer IDEs is a great way and drives multiple of these outcomes. But, I want to emphasize adopting any tool or set of tools isn't the only answer here, right? You have to change the culture. You need to get some champions and celebrate the success of these initial trailblazers and start changing the culture little by little. And lastly here, we have some help. You don't have to go through this yourself, and we can help with 4 different offerings here. So we have free workshops that we can hold on site with your teams, starting with something as simple as a half-day use case exploration, talking about where your pain points are and what could be automated with Zowe and Brightside, all the way through to a full multi-day DevOps assessment to assess your mainframe DevOps readiness and recommend places where you can get started. We have workshops, hands-on workshops with how to use and develop with Zowe and Brightside. And then we'll even take the first step with you and help you by developing a proof of concept with you on one of these use cases that you want to explore. So if you're, if you're at all interested in getting going on integrating mainframe into DevOps, please reach out to us. Okay, so I took a little more longer than I was expecting with this go through, so I'm going to turn it back over to the moderator for closing.
George, no problem. This is great information. I did want to go over just one of the questions here quickly. For all the attendees, after we do this one question, I'm going to do the drawing for the 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. And keep in mind this webinar is recorded, so share it with your peers and make sure you can get this great information over to them as well. So the quick question before I do the drawing is, with all of these tools, so you guys have invested a lot in the open source community. With all these open source tools, how does one frame a strategy to picking the right one?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The first thing to do is really not look at the tools, but again, look at the outcomes that you want to achieve, and then look at what you need to automate in order to achieve those outcomes. And automation would be part of it, of course. Process and people change will be part of it as well. And then as part of that, you'll start understanding through those use cases that there are tools available to help with this automation. And if you're looking at test automation, there's lots of articles out there that survey the different test automation tools, both open source and commercial, and you can see what's right for you. Also, again, encourage you not to do it in a vacuum, to look at what your enterprise side of the house is using. If they're using something already, chances are that would be a good place to start looking, because eventually, if not initially, you're going to want to integrate the enterprise and mainframe pipelines all together.
Great. Yeah, and this is such a common question because there's so much available and there's a lot to consider. But also, it looks like you guys have some offerings that can help weave through that. There's other questions, and really appreciate those, and hopefully we can get back to you after the webinar with responses to those. I'm going to quickly do the drawing now. So we have 3 winners of the Amazon $50 gift card. The first winner is Janet Z. The second winner is Michael K. And the third winner is Goran B. So congratulations to the winners. You will be getting an email that explains how to claim that for you. And George, thank you so much for your time. This is, like I said, very interesting content to me as well, the intersection of old and new. So I appreciate you taking the time today to deliver that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.